They say war changes a man, but no one talks about what it changes when he comes back. I left my home as a husband, a man full of plans and promises. I came back months later missing a leg and something else I couldn't quite name. Maybe it was the silence that replaced my confidence, or the way people looked through me now instead of at me. But nothing cut deeper than the look in her eyes the day I rolled through our front door. It wasn't pity. It wasn't love. It was distance. Something had happened while I was gone. And deep down, I think I already knew what it was. Part 1. The day I came home. I used to imagine coming home as a hero. In my mind, she'd be on the porch, her arms wide open, maybe a tear running down her cheek. We'd fall into each other like no time had passed. That's how I thought it would go. But the real day, the day I actually came home, was quiet. No welcome sign. No tears. Just the sound of the wheels on my chair brushing the wooden floor, echoing through a house that didn't feel like mine anymore. She was in the kitchen when I arrived.
Claire.
My wife. Her back turned, hands busy with something mundane. Washing dishes, maybe. I called her name.
Softly.
She turned, and in her eyes, I didn't see relief. I didn't see joy. I saw hesitation. She walked toward me, kissed my cheek. Her hands were gentle, but her eyes didn't match. Her hug felt like an obligation, not a homecoming. "Hey," she said, voice steady. "You're home." And that was it. No tears. No breakdown. Just a sentence. The first night back, I couldn't sleep. Not just because of the pain in the leg I'd left behind, but because of the pain that was still sitting quietly beside me in bed. Her silence, her stillness. She curled away from me, her breaths even and slow, like I wasn't even there. That's when I noticed. Something had shifted. The pictures on the wall were the same. The couch hadn't moved. The clock still ticked, but everything felt wrong. Or maybe it was me. Maybe I was the one who didn't fit anymore. But there was one truth I couldn't shake. I left my home with a wife.
I wasn't sure what I had come back to.
Part 2. The distance. They say distance makes the heart grow fonder. But no one talks about what happens when that distance stays, long after the reunion. A week passed. Maybe 2. The days blurred together like a watercolor painting left out in the rain. Edges soft, moments indistinct. Claire and I existed in the same space, but we weren't together. We were side by side but miles apart. She moved around me like I was made of glass. Careful. Calculated. Like one wrong step would shatter whatever was left between us. I tried to pretend I didn't notice. I smiled at her jokes even when they didn't land. I asked about her day, even though she barely answered. Every time I wheeled into the kitchen, I saw her flinch. Just slightly. Just enough. And the worst part wasn't her silence. It was the way she was suddenly full of words, with other people. With the neighbor who came over to drop off soup. With the grocery delivery guy she chatted with at the door. With Arthur. Especially Arthur. Arthur, my oldest friend. The man who mowed our lawn while I was overseas. The man who fixed the broken shutters. Who brought her firewood in winter. The man whose laugh I heard more in our house than my own wife's voice. I caught her smiling at her phone one afternoon. Not the kind of smile you give your sister or a coworker. No, it was softer. Private. She looked up, caught me watching her.
Her face changed.
The phone disappeared. "Work stuff," she said, not looking at me. I nodded. But inside, something cracked. That night, I stared at the ceiling long after she fell asleep. I counted every tick of the clock on the wall. I remembered the heat of the desert, the sound of mortar fire, the silence after the blast that took my leg. But nothing in that war made me feel as hollow as the quiet between us now. I had survived the battlefield, but I was beginning to realize I might not survive this marriage. Part 3. The Stranger in Our House. It started with a laugh. Not Claire's. Not mine. A man's laugh. Deep, familiar, just a little too comfortable. I was coming down the hallway from the bathroom, the wheels of my chair whispering across the hardwood, when I heard it echo from the kitchen. I froze. It was Arthur. He was standing at the stove, flipping something in a pan, wearing one of my old t-shirts. Claire was leaned against the counter, barefoot, sipping coffee. She looked relaxed. Too relaxed. I cleared my throat. They both turned. The smile dropped off Arthur's face fast. Claire stiffened. "Hey, you're up," she said, like I'd just come down from a nap. Like it wasn't strange to have another man cooking breakfast in my kitchen, like he lived there. Arthur put the spatula down. "Morning, bud," he said. Too casual. Too forced. "What's going on?" I asked. Claire answered before he could. "Arthur came by to help fix the sink. You know how it's been leaking." Her voice was light, practiced. But her eyes didn't meet mine. I nodded slowly, said nothing, just wheeled myself past them and parked in the living room. From there, I could still hear everything. The clink of silverware, the low murmurs. Once, a soft laugh from Claire, one I hadn't heard in weeks. That night, I asked her, "Are you and Arthur?" I didn't finish the sentence. Couldn't. Her eyes widened, not in guilt, but in offense. "How could you even think that?" she snapped. "He's your friend. He's been helping us. Since before you came home." Exactly. Before I came home. Before I ruined the rhythm she had built without me. That night, we didn't speak again. She slept facing the wall. I stared at the ceiling. And somewhere in the house that once held our love, I started to feel like a guest. Or worse, a ghost. A stranger in my own home. Part 4. The Motel Room. It had been a week since the Arthur incident. A week of Claire avoiding my eyes. A week of her brushing off my questions, her voice growing sharper each time I asked something simple like, "Where are you going?" Or, "Will you be home for dinner?" She'd started working later. Or so she said. That Thursday night, she came home past midnight. No explanation. Just a long silence and a quick, "I'm tired," before disappearing into the shower. I couldn't sleep. Not because of the pain, though my leg ached in the cold, but because something in the house felt wrong. So, I did what I hadn't done in months. I left. I wheeled myself down the driveway, into the night. I needed to breathe, to think, to feel something besides the static inside my chest. That's when I saw it. Claire's car. Parked outside a roadside motel, 10 minutes from our house. Room 108. I sat across the street for nearly an hour, watching. At 1:12 a.m., the door opened. Arthur stepped out. He wasn't rushing, wasn't hiding, just calm, like this was normal. He stretched, looked around, then walked back into the room. My heart collapsed in my chest. I don't know how long I sat there after that, frozen in my chair. The lights from the motel sign flickered above me like a cruel heartbeat. Eventually, I turned around and rolled away. The motel didn't need to tell me what I already knew. My wife wasn't just drifting from me. She had already left. Only her body remained in the house. Her heart had checked out long ago, and it had gone to room 108. Part 5. Seeing Claire again. The next morning, Claire stood at the kitchen counter, pouring coffee like it was any other day. The sunlight cut through the blinds and painted soft lines across her face. She looked tired but not guilty. Not like someone who'd just come home from a motel room with another man. I watched her from the dining table, hands gripping the sides of my wheelchair. I didn't speak. I just waited. She glanced at me, noticed the stillness, the weight in the room. "You're up early," she said softly. I didn't answer. She set down her mug, brows furrowing. "What's wrong?" My voice came out low, cold. "How was room 108? Her eyes widened. She didn't deny it, didn't stammer or ask me what I meant. Instead, she looked away. Silence settled between us, heavy and unforgiving. "I needed someone to talk to," she finally said. Her voice barely carried across the room. "You had me," I replied. "You still have me." She shook her head slowly, tears forming but not falling. "No, I didn't. Not really. Not since you came back in that chair and stopped being you." The words punched harder than any bullet ever could. I wasn't the same man, I knew that. War had changed me. Pain had twisted me. But I never thought I had become invisible. "I lost my legs," I said, staring into her. "Not my heart."
She broke then.
Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just a slow unraveling, like a thread being pulled from a sweater. "I didn't plan for this," she whispered. "I didn't mean to. But you did. I cut in. And now we're here." Neither of us moved. Neither of us knew what to say next. But in that still kitchen, with the scent of coffee in the air and 1,000 unspoken things between us, I knew one thing for certain. Whatever came next, we couldn't go back. Only forward. Or apart. Part 6. The letter to Claire. That night, I couldn't sleep. Claire had gone upstairs hours ago. I heard the creak of our bed, the way she shifted her weight, restless like me. But neither of us reached out. We hadn't touched since the truth came out. We hadn't even shared more than a few words. I sat in the dim glow of the living room lamp, pen in hand, a blank sheet of paper on my lap. It wasn't something I planned. But some words don't survive the weight of being spoken. So I wrote, "Claire, I don't know what happens next. I don't know if there's a version of us after this. But I do know I need to say things out loud, even if it's only on paper. You were my home before all this. Before the sand and the fire and the shattered bones. Before the wheelchair. Before the loneliness that came with it. And I came back hoping that would be enough, that we'd find a way to build something again from the pieces. But somewhere along the way, we stopped speaking the same language. I buried myself in silence. You buried yourself in someone else. Maybe we were both trying to feel something other than grief. I'm not writing this to hurt you. And I'm not writing this to forgive you either. Not yet. I'm writing because I need you to know that I see you, not just the mistake you made. I see the woman who sat beside me in a hospital bed, crying when the doctors told us I'd never walk again. I see the woman who pulled double shifts just to keep us afloat. I see the weight you carry. And I wonder if I ever really helped lift it, or if I just became one more thing for you to hold. I want to hate you. God knows it would be easier. But I don't. I'm just tired of pretending we're okay, of pretending I don't miss who we used to be. You said I stopped being me after I came home, but maybe we both did. I don't know what the next chapter looks like. But if there's even a flicker of the woman who used to love me and you still, I need her to tell me what she wants. Because I'm done guessing. Part 7. The kitchen table. Morning came quietly. No slamming doors. No raised voices. Just the soft sound of the coffee machine whirring to life and the faint rustle of pages turning. I wheeled into the kitchen slowly. Claire was already there, sitting at the table in her robe, the letter unfolded in front of her. Her eyes were puffy, her cheeks blotched with the kind of red that comes from silent crying. But she didn't flinch when she saw me. She didn't hide the letter either. Instead, she slid out the chair across from her and said, "Sit with me." I took my place, the distance between us narrower now, but still heavy with what we hadn't said. "I read it," she whispered. I nodded. I figured. The kettle screamed from the stove. She turned it off quickly, poured 2 cups. One for her, one for me, just like we used to. That felt like a kindness. "I didn't mean for it to happen," she said, fingers wrapped tight around the mug. And I'm not just saying that to ease the guilt. I didn't interrupt. I let her speak because I could tell she needed to. "I felt alone, even when you were here. You didn't talk, Jake. You stopped looking at me. And she paused, forcing the words out. I needed to feel something. Needed to feel seen." "That man made you feel seen?" "No," she said quickly, firmly. "He made me feel like someone still wanted me. That I wasn't invisible. It was selfish. It was wrong. But it wasn't about love." I stared down at my hands, scarred and stiff. "You know what it feels like to sit in this chair every day and know I'm not the man you married anymore?" Her eyes welled up again. "That's not true." "It is, Claire. And pretending it's not doesn't help either of us." She reached across the table, tentative, her hand landing on mine. "You didn't stop being you. You just stopped letting me in. And you didn't wait long to find someone else." The words were out before I could stop them. She flinched, but didn't pull away. "I deserve that," she whispered. "But I'm still here, Jake. I read your letter, and I'm still here. That has to count for something." We sat in silence after that. Not awkward. Not tense. Just quiet. The kind of quiet that comes when both people are tired of pretending they're not hurting. Claire finally stood. "I'm going to take a walk." I nodded, unsure if she was walking away for good. But she paused at the door. "Do you want anything while I'm out?" It was such a small question, but it cracked something open in me. "No," I said softly, "but thank you for asking." She smiled just a little and then stepped outside. And I stayed there at the kitchen table, wondering if maybe, just maybe, that small question was the first step back towards something we both thought we'd lost. Part 8. One day at a time. She came back. Not just through the door that afternoon, not just into the house, but slowly, carefully back into us. There were no big apologies, no sweeping declarations. Just a quiet nod from her and a small breath of air I didn't know I'd been holding. We didn't fix everything overnight. Hell, we barely touched the surface. But we sat at the same table the next morning. And the one after that. One day at a time. That's what the therapist we finally saw said. A phrase I'd heard in the military too, though it meant something different back then. Survive today. Worry about tomorrow if you get there. Now it meant learning how to share space again. How to speak gently. How to ask, "How was your day?" And actually want the answer. We had rules. No yelling. No blame. And strangely enough, no pretending. If it hurt, say it. If it helped, say that too. There were days Claire barely looked at me. Days I couldn't look at her without remembering the motel key, the way her voice trembled when she told me the truth. But even then we stayed. One morning, I found her humming at the sink, scrubbing a pan like nothing had ever shattered between us. And it hit me. Trust doesn't rebuild all at once. It returns in whispers, in shared glances, in moments like that when the world feels a little less sharp than the day before. Some days I hated the chair, hated the silence in my legs, the way people looked at me with pity, like I'd been reduced to something broken. But Claire never looked at me that way. Not anymore. She touched my shoulder when she passed. She waited for me to finish my sentences.
She saw me.
We started eating dinner together again, watching shows we'd abandoned during the worst of it. She laughed more, and sometimes so did I. The hardest part wasn't forgiving her. It was forgiving myself for needing help, for pushing her away when I should have reached for her hand. But healing is a slow thing, a quiet thing, one day at a time. There's no perfect ending to this story, no clean fix. But sometimes the bravest thing you can do is wake up next to someone and choose to stay. Not because it's easy, but because it's worth it. Part 9, the anniversary. It came faster than I expected. Our anniversary. 10 years. It used to be something we celebrated with wine, a weekend away, maybe a new piece of jewelry. This time, it just appeared. Slipped in like a memory you're not sure you want to open. Claire remembered. I could tell by the way she moved around the kitchen that morning.
Softer.
Slower. Like she didn't want to stir up anything fragile. 10 years today, she said, not looking at me. I nodded, my fingers circling the rim of my coffee mug. Yeah, 10. We didn't say much after that. Just sipped our drinks like we were waiting for a storm neither of us wanted to name. Later, she asked if I wanted to go out. A small dinner. Just us. I almost said no. I was afraid it would feel fake. That every smile would be a cover, every toast a lie. But then I saw the effort in her eyes, and I realized something simple and brutal. She was trying. Trying not to erase what we were. Trying not to give up on what we could still be. So I said yes. We went to a little place downtown. Nothing fancy. A booth by the window. We sat across from each other like two people still relearning how to breathe in the same space. The waiter asked if we were celebrating anything. Claire smiled. 10 years. He grinned like that meant something perfect. Like we were one of those couples who made it, no cracks, no scars. But the truth sat heavy in the silence between us. We were here. Together. Still standing, but changed. We didn't talk about the past that night. Not the motel room. Not the lies. We didn't need to. Instead, we talked about little things. A recipe Claire wanted to try. A new movie I'd heard about. We talked like people who had loved each other a long time. Not perfectly.
But deeply.
She reached across the table once. Touched my hand. Thank you, she whispered, for giving this a chance. I looked at her fingers, slender and warm, wrapped around mine. And I remembered the woman I married. Not just the girl in the white dress, smiling under the oak trees, but this woman who had made mistakes, who had shattered things, and still came back.
Thank you, I said.
For staying. The ride home was quiet, comfortable, and when we got back, I followed her into the bedroom. Not out of habit, not out of duty, but because I wanted to be close again. Because 10 years is a long time to carry love. And sometimes the miracle isn't that it survives untouched, but that it survives at all. Part 10. Coming home for real. The morning after our anniversary, something felt different. Not dramatic. Not fireworks or sudden clarity. Just stillness. The kind you notice only after the storm finally passes. Claire was in the kitchen, humming softly to herself. It was a tune I didn't recognize, but it settled into the room like a memory we hadn't lived yet. I sat at the edge of the bed, one leg still bound in the brace, the old metal of my wheelchair creaking beside me like an old friend who'd seen too much. The house was quiet, peaceful, but the real silence wasn't around me. It was inside. The kind of silence that comes when the war in your heart starts to fade. I thought about how long I'd been fighting. Not overseas, not with weapons, but here at home. In this body that didn't move the way it used to. In a marriage that had bent under the weight of everything we couldn't say. In the mirror, where I had to meet a version of myself I never wanted to become. I've been afraid for so long. Of pity, of betrayal, of being a man who needed too much. But sitting there, listening to Claire stir coffee and hum like everything wasn't broken, I realized something. She hadn't left. She could have.
She almost did.
But she stayed. And not out of guilt or fear, but because somewhere beneath the wreckage, we were still us.
Bent, yes.
Bruised. But not gone. I wheeled myself into the kitchen. She looked up, surprised, her smile small and real.
Morning, I said.
Morning, she replied, handing me a mug without asking. She always remembered how I liked it, 2 sugars, no cream. I took a sip. It tasted like every morning we'd ever had. But it also tasted new. I've been thinking, I said, eyes on the steam rising between us. I'm ready to come home. She blinked. You're home. I shook my head slowly.
No.
Not like before. I've been here, but not really. I've been surviving. But I want to live again. With you. If you'll let me. Her hand trembled as she set her mug down. Her eyes glistened, but the tears didn't fall. She stepped around the counter, knelt beside my chair, and rested her head against my chest. You've been home all along, she whispered. I was just waiting for you to see it. I wrapped my arms around her. It wasn't a perfect moment, but it was ours.
Raw. Honest.
Forgiven. That day, we didn't talk about therapy or timelines or what came next. We just stayed close. We cooked together. We laughed at old photos. We held hands while watching a movie we'd seen a dozen times. And when night fell, I didn't sleep on the couch. I went to bed. With my wife. Not because everything was fixed, but because for the first time in a long time I believed it could be. I was home. And this time I wasn't leaving.